Okay, so I know some of you are probably subject matter experts in this by now, but we thought it'd be quite good just to give everybody a reminder of how the boards operate and who does what. So I will walk through 4 slides really quickly. Part of the reason I did the update today was so we didn't just kind of bore you with PowerPoint for an hour and 30 minutes tonight. So I hope as many of you as possible got to read the update, and no doubt there'll be questions on that. But so I think we are going to show you 5 slides this evening, and the rest of it's going to be us talking. So obviously the Dons Trust, as you know, is the elected board. It sets the culture, mission, strategic direction in consultation with the members. It appoints the directors of the PLC. It approves the annual budgets proposed by the directors of the PLC. It approves significant investment decisions. It operates the trust. It meets regularly, and it communicates with its members. Next slide, Chris, please. The operational board, appointed by the Dons Trust, is the PLC board. Between 9 and 12 board members. As we discussed a little while ago, 3 from the Dons Trust board, who carry a blocking vote if required. They are Michelle, Graham, and James. The board chair, which is me, manages James, the MD, Craig, the head of football operations, Michael Hamilton, the academy manager, and Johnny Jackson, the first team manager. They all attend the board, not every month. Craig and James are there every month. Johnny is there virtually every month, and Michael is there on a regular basis. So as well as that, we've recruited external experts to the board for specific skills and or business experience, whether that's wider football knowledge, wider finance knowledge, property and development, HR, communications, etc. We've recently appointed Michelle Gull, who sends her apologies, not feeling well tonight. Michelle was previously the HR director at West Ham United for a long spell, between 7 and 9 years from memory. 14 years, okay, we're going up. And is now the HR director at Dulwich College. And she has been on the board for 3 months, has attended 3 board meetings, has made some really highly valued inputs into areas where we know we need to strengthen. So we've already really seen the value of Michelle joining the board and her contributions. Dan also joined the board, I think slightly later, 2 months ago. Dan will introduce himself in a minute, but has got fantastic experience in communications at high levels in football. Communications is an area that we have wanted to improve in over a long period of time, and Dan has already brought some excellent insights, not just about comms, but actually about other aspects of football governance. So the next slide. So basically we have 4 positions reporting into the PLC board. James, the managing director, Craig, the head of football operations, Michael, the academy manager, and Johnny, the football manager. And then just a little bit about decision making. So within the articles, you know, it is set out that key decisions the PLC is not entitled to discuss without the approval of the Dons Trust board and their members. So, you know, we can't talk about changing. You'll be pleased to hear the name of the club, the badge, the colours, the ownership of the club or any of its subsidiaries. We can't take out any borrowing against Plough Lane, where the lender would have a charge over the stadium. We can't make any changes to the ownership of Plough Lane, and we can't relocate, thank goodness. So, you know, so the PLC has a remit to operate the club, but it's not an unfettered remit. There are significant checks and balances on what it can do and what it can discuss. So we can discuss other business decisions But any decision then has to be approved by the Dons Trust Board. So again, we've got significant checks and balances which make a great deal of sense. So for example, if we were to agree a ground share or propose a ground share with somebody, if the executive team were with our approval to sell sponsorship to organisations deemed not suitable, we can't change the club charter on anything that directly impacts the fans without the approval of a Dons Trust Board. I think I mentioned earlier the Dons Trust Board approves the annual budget for the club. The executive team are not allowed to implement price rises greater than inflation on issues such as tickets, merchandise, food and beverage without the approval of the Dons Trust Board. And obviously, Michelle said the boards are naturally working quite well together, but we do need pretty strong governance to make sure that future generations of PLC and Dons Trust Board members continue to do the same. So any significant investment decisions or new areas of business also require approval by the Dons Trust Board. You would imagine that covers absolutely everything. Believe me, there's quite a lot of other stuff that the PLC Board does discuss on a monthly basis where it doesn't need to kind of get the approval of the Dons Trust. So I hope that's useful just as a reminder, and for those of you that know it chapter and verse, apologies, but I think we've got a relatively new governance and we're trying to get everybody familiar with exactly who does what. So before I move on, has anyone got any questions about that? Lou.
Hi, Luke Carton-Kelly here. Regarding the key decisions requiring membership approval, what were the special resolutions that we would lose if it goes up below 75%?
Sorry, say that again.
So the key decisions on the slide up here requiring members' approval.
Yeah.
What are the special resolutions that we would lose if we go below 75%?
Well, all of those are restricted actions, so they sit completely outside special ordinary resolutions. So there are a much, much higher threshold of voting to make those changes.
Does that answer your question, Lou?
But none of those would change. We're not intending to change any of those. Unless a member or members came to us at a Dons Trust meeting and asked to put forward a resolution to make those changes. But they are restricted action votes which require either one vote or a series of two votes if it's a category A. So we've no intention of changing those. The special resolutions are resolutions at the PLC board, at the PLC meetings. These are things that are decided at Dons Trust level, not at the PLC.
Thanks, Lou. Are there any other questions about how the boards are working now and what their respective responsibilities, or shall I move us on? Okay. Well, tonight is called Meet the PLC Board. I gave rather a too lengthy introduction about myself this time last year, so I'll take it as given that you know who I am. But I do just want to ask the other board member. We've got a heckler.
How's the dog?
You ruined my dog joke now with that. Anyway, so I guess I'm going to ask Nick to kick us off with a brief. That's pretty easy to master, Nick. Who are you? What role do you play on the board? When did you become a director? A quick personal insight, and I advise you don't mention your dog. And the professional experience that you bring to the board, please.
Can I go a bit off piece? I don't want to answer all that because it's all on the website, and hopefully some of you know who I am. I want to sort of lighten the mood a little bit because it seems a bit heavy in the room. I mean, I've been on the board 4 years. I've seen, I think 3.5, 4 years. I've seen tremendous change across every aspect of the club, the way it's run, who's running it, who's doing what, and you know, what so much that you don't see is the amount of time, effort and energy that my colleagues, not just down this table, but on the Dons Trust board and lots of you in the room, put into the running of this club. And it is phenomenal. I think sometimes we lose sight of that, and especially in occasions like this, we lose sight of that. So, I mean, I totally get all the questions and all the challenges. They're absolutely right. But these guys and, you know, lots of people in the room and members of the Dons Trust who aren't here deserve huge respect for the time and energy that they're putting in to make this club happen. And I think just sometimes we lose sight of that. So I just wanted to get that out there. From a sort of what so what do I try and bring to the board? I suppose a bit of clarity sometimes. I mean, I'm not the world's knowledge on football, to be honest. You know, I have run a business that needs very clear sort of direction and focus, and I like to kind of keep the board reminded of exactly what it is we're trying to do. Sometimes you can get lost in some of the detail. I like to look sort of beyond today and tomorrow and next year and the year after, the next 10 years. It's all about building the future. It's about building the future of what fan ownership really looks like and what it could look like and how much we can still dial it up in a way that we haven't done yet. And I'm always sort of challenging them about the size of the opportunity and the size of the prize that we've still got to go. You know, having been involved in 4 years, this was definitely the better season. We had 3 not so great ones, and you know, it is lovely to see when we sat down and challenged ourselves with the things that, you know, we knew we could fix and we knew we could make better, and to actually see that play out through the course of the season was really, really encouraging. And I'd like to think that was, you know, as a result of both boards working really closely together and all completely aligned. I mean, I can't remember a time when we've not been aligned, either as a board or as a joint board, to the decisions we're making across every aspect. So, no, I want to thank my colleagues for working with it. I've thoroughly enjoyed the time on the board and hopefully a few more years to come.
Nick, thanks for not answering my questions. That was much better than the questions, so that's good. James.
Hi there, James McDonald. As Nick said, I think most of my details are on the website. Those of you that watched the PLC introductory videos will be thrilled to know that my son has been to 7 games this season and has taken that threat to disinherit him if he didn't come to more very seriously. I think it's been really encouraging to see a high functioning board at both Dons Trust level and PLC level. Doesn't mean we agree on everything, but we do reach consensus at the end, and that's really important. Working in education, many of you may know that lots of schools have moved, you can argue been forced to move into multi-academy trusts. So 5-6 years ago, I was head teacher at a school, now chief operating officer of a trust that's gone from 2 schools to 9 and about to go to 11. I think I bring that experience of growth, because growth is difficult to manage and sometimes you have to speculate to accumulate, but budgets are tight, and it's where do you think you need to put the resources that you've got to have the most effect. The other thing I bring as a kind of ex-head teacher, but across the trust being designated safeguarding lead, there's a big role to play across the club on a match day, across the academy, across the girls section, in particular around safeguarding, and that's a real focus for us at the moment. And then, you know, you have those moments, you have those days that you look back on. Tomorrow, obviously, a big anniversary of one of those days for all of us that were there. But we had a day at the end of November, very, very long day, where we interviewed some candidates for the MD position, and I think we were, you know, definite consensus here. We were absolutely thrilled to appoint someone of James's calibre and what he brings, but also what he sees at what we could do. And then that evening, Nick very kindly hosted a meal for us all, including Craig and Johnny. And there was that kind of honesty in the room that, you know, there was an outside chance this season, but we were really building for something next season. And I think what I really like at the moment, apart from being part of, you know, an embryonic trust, now what I think is a club that's come home and has got so much to give, is looking at the people that we have on board, and I could go through all the names, but the ones that Mick just mentioned that report into the PLC board, and obviously Bal as well. Laurie's a really important part, Andrew's a really important part of where we're going. We've got a young, hungry, committed management team at both football club and the club level, and it just feels to me, and I think maybe everyone else up here, we're on the brink of something. We're back home and we're going to go places, and to be part of that is a real pleasure. And what I want to bring to that is my experience of growth and all doing everything right to make sure that we go back to what I saw in the early 80s and through the 90s with, without a doubt, the most successful football team. And now we're fan-owned, we'll be the most successful team that is fan-owned. So, yeah, it's a great time to be here. And, I've come down from Nottingham. It's quite a journey today for this meeting, because I think it's just so important that you get to see us and what we're about and how committed, as Nick said, we all are to the success of this wonderful football club.
Thank you, James. That was great. Thanks a lot. I'm now going to ask Dan. So Dan is the newest board member. So I will ask you, Dan, just to say a little bit about why we chose you to be on the board, the professional expertise you bring, and anything else you think these guys need to know about you.
Okay. I'm Dan Johnson. I've worked in politics, media and sport at fairly high levels for the past 25 years, including 17 years at the Premier League. So I've seen all kind of aspects of decision making, some of the kind of challenges that the game has gone through, been at the forefront of some of the governance changes for good and for ill that have kind of come through that. I also, before I joined the Premier League, I worked in politics. So I was a member of trade union movement and worked with someone who might be a familiar name to some of you, Colin Adkins at MSF. So he kind of schooled me in what it was like to be a Wimbledon fan. And I was actually a Wimbledon season ticket holder for the first 3 years that I lived in London as a number of kind of exiles who were desperate to go and watch some good football. So I used to go down to Selhurst Park on Saturday afternoons and enjoy following Wimbledon then. Since I left the Premier League, I actually worked. I did a masters, so I went off and did a masters to educate myself a bit more. Did an MSc in political science and internet governance. And then went off to work in the media for a bit. So I worked for Dow Jones. I worked for a guy called Will Lewis, who was CEO of Dow Jones. I did policy work and speech writing. And then he left that job just at the cusp of the pandemic. And so I went and worked for the NHS during the pandemic on a kind of semi-voluntary basis and ran comms for the NHS Nightingale. Which was a real kind of experience in terms of, it wasn't so much kind of a media handling side of it, it was more of a stakeholder and government relations side of it, which was more complicated. And then I worked for Sport England, which again gave me some fantastic government relations experience, working directly with departments and national governing bodies. So I was an executive director for marketing and communications there. And I currently work for a sports streaming company, which some of you may know if you like boxing in this country. It's called DAZN. But our biggest markets are international. They're in Germany, Italy, Spain, Japan. So again, apologies for being late this evening, but I got stuck on a call with our parent company board, who's based out of the States, and they tend not to respect kind of normal working hours. So what do I think I can bring to the board? Well, I've lived in Southwest London for all the time that I've moved down here. So that was when I was 98, 99. I lived just up the road in Earlsfield, and having had that kind of early on experience with Wimbledon, I've watched your journey, your rebirth, your move back to Plough Lane with interest and pleasure. So I think it's fantastic that you're back at Plough Lane. I think it's fantastic that you're back in the Football League, and the opportunity to use some of my skills, my experience, my knowledge to help continue that journey was a compelling opportunity, and one which I kind of hopefully seize with both hands and continue to contribute in all ways that I can. I'm a great believer in the power of sport, the power of football, to be at the heart of communities and drive change and engage people. And I think that's kind of what's at the heart of AFC Wimbledon, and and long may that continue.
Thank you, Dan. Graham.
Is that on? Yes. Good. Hi, I'm Graham Price. I'm one of the representatives from the DTB on the PLC. Most things that I would say have probably already been said. What I would say is that we are different, and we shouldn't lose sight of what we've got and how we've got here. We need to harness that as best as possible to keep going forward, and the fact that we got back in the league and got back to Plough Lane is just the start of the story. It's not an end. It's just the end of the first bit. Or, as I had a word with Mr. Jones earlier on, maybe the second bit, depending on how you want to look at it. My background is finance. I've done a multitude of roles within the finance sector, both for large global corporates, the likes of whom you'd know, such as AXA and UBS. I've also built a business from scratch as a startup, so both ends of the pendulum, I suppose. And I'd like to continue helping the club grow. That's it. And that's why when I said about the pitch owners bit, Peter, I'm definitely interested from anything that is a decent idea to help raise funds for the club. That's it.
Thank you, Graham. And Michelle, I think a lot of you know Michelle quite well, but maybe you don't know everything about Michelle. I certainly don't. So
I've definitely got hidden facets, not all of which I want to share with you. Where I came in terms of my involvement was as treasurer of the Dons Trust. When I took on that role, it was the trust finances are very, very straightforward compared to the football club. So looking after the trust finances is not that big a deal on the face of it, until you get told, oh, and by the way, there's 10 million quid of bonds you've got to look after. So that's what my focus is always on that, and that's the most important thing to me, that we continue to look after that debt well, we manage it sensibly, we don't take undue risks, and we always, always, always pay our bondholders the interest that's due, and we'll also honour any bond repayments that are coming up next year. So that's where I start, and forgive me for being very finance focused in some of the answers that I give you, but it is because we live in a very unsustainable world as a football club, and we don't have the luxury of a wealthy owner who will bail us out. We are I'm delighted that we have lots and lots of fans who've contributed over the years in different ways. The bondholders, we have about 2,200 bondholders who have put, between 1,000 and I think the biggest one is 250,000. So I'm incredibly grateful to all of those bondholders who've put their money forward. And I do everything I can to make sure they're looked after well. I then joined the Dons Trust Board in 2021, and then last September became chair of the Dons Trust Board. I never asked to be chair. It's not necessarily something it's in my natural comfort zone, but I'm very happy to do the job and to do my best to make sure that we oversee the club appropriately. So I have got, apart from my finance experience in the city, I've also sat on the boards of quite a lot of charities, so I've got quite a bit of governance experience.
That's great. So there's lots we can talk about, but I thought at this stage maybe we might want to throw it open to you guys to sort of see what you want to say, how you're feeling, what you want to ask us. So, you know, we can keep on talking, but actually it might be good for us to listen now for a bit. So, yeah.
Bob Ford again. One thing I was going to ask is, have we considered asking the bondholders if they would just gift the money to the club? Because I personally would. And then the second question is for Graham. What's the better club, the Toon or the Maccles?
So just before we answer the first one, just after Ronan Curtis scored that amazing goal just down there, I walked around this lounge and the first 6 people I met offered to write off their bond. So it was an amazing afternoon and evening. But Michelle.
So yes, absolutely. We have conducted surveys of the most important group for us are the bondholders who took out 5-year bonds in 2020, and so those bonds are due to be repaid in early next year. We did a survey giving them lots of different options, including donating to the club or to the trust, rolling over their bonds, having them repaid, and also potentially converting to shares in AFCW PLC. So we've got some quite good feedback from those surveys. We're at the process in the middle of putting the final touches to the Plough Lane Bond website to enable bondholders to make those choices. And the way we've designed the rebuild of the site is obviously our primary focus now is to understand the position for next year, but any bondholder who has got a bond of any length can also choose early if they want to donate their money. So that will be it will be open to everybody to make choices should they wish.
I'll just add that you can donate now. You don't have to wait for the bond website to open up, because all you're doing is accruing further interest. So if you want to help, you can help now. And in answer to the question about the football clubs, you know that, although Eric, of course, will disagree with me, but I would definitely say Newcastle.
He's got his head in his hands, Graham, so
Yeah,
we'll take that as disagreement. Okay. Any other questions, comments, opinions, please?
Hello, it's Craig.
Hi, Craig.
Firstly, Nick, what you said at the start, I totally agree. I thought the room was getting a little bit not so friendly. I can see where everyone's coming from this side, and it's only because they care, but sometimes you get it all thrown at you. So some of them I don't really understand, but I'll go along with what you said. Secondly, on the left hand, the zone does a lot of boxing. We have a stadium. Any chance?
I'll have a word with Eddie. So, I can ask Matchroom, and they're the promoters and they're the guys who we work with. But I've heard worse ideas.
So, Chris, if there's a spare mic, you could put it on this table. Is there a spare mic? Yeah, okay. So bring it over here, because I think these guys might want to input a little bit as we go along as well. And we'll come back to the boxing.
Good evening, everyone. Roger Hopkinson. Some of you just talked about the future, and I think that's intrinsically linked to the concern about the first part of this meeting. You're not telling a strong enough narrative and story about where we're going to and the barriers and the enablers in front of us, which require some of the changes that you've been talking about. I'd just like to express my gratitude to some of the people who've got a good forensic understanding of corporate governance and raising the points they've made so far. But essentially it's the narrative of where we're going. We've been home for 4 years this November, 3 years in front of fans. our next journey, our staging points. You need to tell that story better, please.
So I completely agree, Roger. I mean, we've worked really well together since before 2002. And, after 2002, we had to work together to keep the club going, to acquire Kings Meadow, to get back to the Football League. Then it was to get back to Plough Lane. That was really, that sort of bound us together in terms of a destination we were trying to get to. I think we're now in a position where we really need to sort of start work on redefining together. I noticed you used the word "you" there. You need to tell us the narrative. Actually, we all need to work together to understand where we want to take the club next. Nick, did you want to?
Yeah, I mean, that we can mop up a few things in there, Roger, because I think, you're absolutely right. So what I've seen over the last sort of year is a number of strategic intents that I think we're now all pretty much agreed with. We talk about the sort of first chapter, the second chapter. What does the third chapter look like? How realistic is that third chapter? So I think we're starting now to think about, heading towards championship in a time frame to be determined. But that then starts off a different sort of set of strategic intents and operational challenges. It starts with going, okay, are we set up as a club from a resource perspective? Have we got the right talent that can drive us to where we want to get to? That's been the process of the last 12 months doing that. Then you've rightly picked up on the asset that we've had here for 4 years. How are we doing? How are we monetising that? And what is the urgency? What is the gun to the club's head about the finances? And it was only 18 months ago we were sort of looking at a potentially first bond payment coming up. We were looking at having received some money from Masal, but not acknowledging necessarily we were going to get more money from Al Hamidi. And as the year's gone on, we've had conversations with bondholders, which have been very encouraging with regard to how much we would need to pay down. We've had the sale of Al Hamidi, which has affected things. So it's a moving feast, and I think to sit here and say strategically we've got to do this, that, and that. We're absolutely trying to get to that point. But as far as the finance is concerned, it has been, in a positive way, encouraging that actually things we thought we might have to do with a gun to our head a year ago, we might not have to do. And obviously the last thing we want to do is to sort of, the sacrosanct of fan ownership and what that percentage is. And none of the board, either PLC or Don's Trust, want to move that figure. But I suppose what we want to do is make sure that in time, and as we look to the future and look toward our aspiration of championship football, what are we going to need to do that? Well, we are going to need to develop this ground out. We don't have the capital to do that, so whoever we do that with is probably going to take the lion's share of the income. So we need to be realistic about what income we are going to get back for that. If we are going to be a championship club, we're going to need to significantly improve our training facilities and our training ground. Well, where's the capital going to come from for that? So I think we're all saying the same thing, and I just hope that you're sort of now getting a feel for strategically we're all now pretty much aligned, and some of the sort of the tensions in the room from the last 12 months, 18 months are starting to sort of dissolve, because we're actually all starting to say and speak the same languages to where we want to go and how we're going to get there, and we're all aligned. Fan ownership is absolutely sacrosanct, but if we need that equity, and if we need somebody to come in with another 2 million and a 4 million, what is that for? Is it for training ground? Will training ground improve the squad, which will get us to the championship aspiration? That's the language we should be talking. That's a long-winded way of answering your question, Roger, but hopefully it gives you a bit of a sense of how we're feeling about things.
Can I just chip in there as well? There are 2 or 3 other pieces of work that are ongoing at the moment, and one of those is to look at that story around what we need. So, as part of this discussion about selling more equity, what are the other things that we need that money for, or things that we might need somebody else's money for, and trying to put that together in one place. So that would be partly a sort of general finance update on where we are now compared to 2020 when the first bonds were taken out, and what are the development opportunities and things we're looking at around the ground and the training ground and so on. So what we would like to give everyone is a broader update that picks up a number of those different areas. So I'm hoping that will be in the next few weeks into the summer.
Yeah, Martin Ware. Should we try and win something rather than just get promoted? I mean, can we win a cup, win the league? Because what's the point of just being promoted and not winning anything ever?
Well, I'm with you, Martin. Definitely, yeah. I actually want to win everything we enter. Some people want to win some things more than others, and I want to win everything. So yeah. Certainly the manager of the club, of the team, knows that we want to win stuff, and so does he.
Jane Lonsdale, just perfect leading. So the women won their league this season. I haven't heard that mentioned at all tonight. They've done a fantastic job. They won't be your money spinners, but they brought 2,600 people, broke all records last week. And I think the March PLC minutes noted that the board discussed the priority in which they want to hold the women's section and how they could be supported. I think last year's statement about a minimum of 4 games, I think the previous year there'd been 8 games here, and I think we need to be really realistic about getting them here and getting them support. They are the positive of the last 12 months or so, I think, and they've galvanised over. They've had a 5-year plan, they've stuck to it, they've done it, and they've achieved their promotion. And I think we should all be incredibly proud of them.
Hear, hear.
And then I'm afraid I'm going to bring the mood down a little bit. So I am formally raising concerns to the PLC today in relation to the collection and data handling that has been undertaken by the club on behalf of the club and trust against ICO requirements. I have raised my concerns and sought assurance privately through the Dons Trust Board and the club's data protection officer as requested by Michelle. However, the more I discover, the more concerned I am that the club is acting against UK GDPR legislation, leaving itself open to a breach of data policy that could incur huge fines. Serious breaches can now see organisations fined up to 4% of its group worldwide turnover. I've been a data protection officer and a data protection handler in my career, so I'm speaking from a position of knowledge. The advice that has been provided to the club by a company called Winners, which is a sports data marketing firm, not a data collection and privacy protection consultancy. I'm asking the PLC formally to review the data protection practices currently being undertaken in the club and trust, to provide a report to all shareholders publishing the findings, along with publishing all relevant documentation, including data protection policies, notices and agreements. They are 3 separate documents, and there seems to be a lot of confusion in the club about, or from certain people, what they are. I'd also like to know when PLC members and trust members last received training. This used to be an annual requirement. I'm really sorry to have to raise this at this board meeting. I have tried to do this behind closed doors with members of the PLC, and frankly the last email I received was rude and abrupt, and for somebody who is trying to help you as a volunteer, not get yourself fined huge amounts of money. The way I've been treated in the last, 50 odd hours is appalling, quite frankly.
Well, I hate to hear that someone who's contributed so much to the club is feeling that they've been treated badly. So I'm very sorry if that has happened, Jane. Not completely aware of the facts. How do you want to deal with this issue? I mean, is it something for the public meeting, or is it something more for offline?
Well, I think we have had discussions and conversations. I think we should look across the DT and the club and consider what you have suggested, and then we'll come back to you with our recommendations as to how we will proceed. Sorry.
Sorry. I sent an email to Angus with questions in it because there's a lot of confusion about who we are.
Yeah.
When we talk about we are two distinct entities.
Yeah.
It's really, really important you get this right because the risks are huge. And when we're talking about a club being sustainable, you don't want to land yourself with a fine because you thought you weren't collecting identifiable data when you have, and then you've now told me that you're going to notify those people because they're identifiable. It's a bit of a mess and it really needs sorting out and urgently.
Okay, Jane, thanks. And actually, you know, you've got expertise in this area, so we do want to get you into a conversation about that. So let's not do that here, but let's commit that we will do it, yeah? Thank you very much. Question down there? Some questions at the back?
Can I repeat that? Hi. Before I ask my question, I'd just like to mention somebody's name who hasn't been mentioned tonight, and that's Chris Stewart. None of you on the top table will be sitting there but Chris's founder of the club with 300 people. He served on the Dons Trust Board for many, many years. He served on the PLC and he stood in as MD for quite a while. He now no longer has any role. I'm just disappointed there's been no mention of him tonight, or thanks. And it was exactly the same at the Dons Trust Board meeting when I mentioned him. We're not very good at saying thank you to people. And I hope something will be done with that respect. What I'm going to ask, I've just stressed there's no reflection at all on Dan because he's not been here, and I just hope actually what I'm going to say will be of use to him. Last year, and I stress last year, the board instigated 2 surveys. I wasn't invited to participate in either. I wasn't among the chosen few in a way, despite a certain level of expertise in both. But like a lot of other outsiders, I insisted. And I was assured that both surveys would be published in some form at least. And that was 6 months ago, and we're still waiting. One of those surveys was into the club's comms strategy. Yet even the findings of a communication survey haven't even been communicated to us. Don't you realise how absurd that is? Seriously, I believe your repeated comms failings are the common factor in a lot of the issues that most concern and at times anger our supporters. Last year you copped up over the comms on London Irish. And you copped up big time over Danny Macklin and his problems. And more recently, the comms relating to the decision to impose Dons Trust membership on season ticket holders was a disaster. And the impending issue of 50+1 is going to be even more contentious. And it needs to be handled properly. Some people actually suspect that you don't tell us anything unless you really, really have to. Now, as I said at the beginning,
Peter, do you want to? How much longer do you need? Because I think I've got the gist of.
No, I'm going to say it.
Right.
We can't blame any of this on Dan. In fact, I hope the PLC will do more than just listen to Dan. I hope they'll actually take his advice. I'd like to hear from Dan what he thinks of our comms, as they stand today, what he's going to do to improve them, and will he, crucially, recommend the release of the findings, recommendations of those 2 surveys. Because if they aren't released, it will simply confirm, support suspicions that they contain recommendations the board don't like and won't implement. There are 2 surveys launched 6 months ago. Can we be told something about them? And I hope Dan will contribute.
Well, I'm not aware of the specific issues, and I'm not aware of the surveys. So I mean,
you haven't been told about the surveys.
Well, I'm not currently aware of the surveys. I think is one of them to do with informing the communication strategy.
Yeah, they're not.
So, thank you, Peter.
No,
So Peter, can I, if it's okay for the rest of the room so that they can hear a conversation, I was about to throw to Dan for his comments on where we are from a comms point of view. So the board has commissioned 2 people to give us their insights on where we are from a comms and from an organisational effectiveness point of view. Both those people are going to feature in website interviews in the next week, where they're going to talk about the work they did, who they spoke to, and what their findings were. The board has had those findings for a while, so we could have been quicker in making that happen, but we have been acting on their recommendations. And one of the recommendations was to get some high-level strategic comms input on the board, and that's why Dan is sitting here.
Yeah.
Another one of their recommendations was around leadership in the club, and that's part of the reason why James, just one of the reasons why James got the job as MD. Another one of the recommendations was that people didn't understand the new board governance structure. People were confused as to who was running the club. People didn't know who the PLC board members were. So, that's part of the reason we're here tonight, actually, as part of a response to that. Another one of the recommendations was around contracting with fans as to what fan ownership means from a comms point of view. We haven't really got to that yet because partially it's a Don's Trust Board initiative with the members as well as a PLC board initiative with fans. So one of the areas we struggle is the expectation of fans as owners in terms of what they will get to hear on a day-to-day basis about what's going on at the club. So that will be forthcoming. Another recommendations was around a more strategic approach to comms day-to-day within the club. And that's now happening with James and Chris Lavin and Chris Thorpe. And there were 2 or 3 other things. The guy who did the comms review will be, and actually I apologise for it not happening yet. Part of the reason it's been delayed is because the Don's Trust board member involved had some family illness. So we are a little bit behind on that. In terms of the other survey you're referring to, that was one done by a company called Q5. It was an organisational health assessment, and Q5 is a fantastic consultancy that goes into organisations. It talks to staff members, it talks to board members, talks to customers, and talks to other important stakeholders. So the Q5 report, they surveyed 80 staff, board members, volunteers. As Peter said, the kind of circle of people who were surveyed kind of widened, and he was one of the people who gave some great insight into it. Ollie Purnell, who some of you know, who runs the company that did that report, will also be doing something on the website soon, just talking about the findings. If you're interested, the headlines of what they found was what was good about AFC Wimbledon is the unique story, the club that does stuff right, it's family friendly, it's powered by goodwill, lots of people want to volunteer here, lots of people feel very positive in the way that they think about us. through the activities of the club, of DLAG, of the foundation, of WISH, we authentically place ourselves at the heart of our community. We are able to call upon some amazing expertise. I mean, just look around this room and see some of the skills that we either benefit from now or have benefited from in the past. It's a massive plus for us. And they also, couldn't but notice the amazing facilities we had here. So that, like any good consultant, they'll start the report by telling you what's good before they get onto the stuff that you may feel slightly more defensive about. So they picked out 6 key themes that they think we really need to improve on. One of the themes was just going back to what I said a few minutes ago about, we don't have the lofty aim that we had when we were trying to build the stadium. So they identified many of our challenges around comms and other areas coming from an absence of a defined vision and strategy. And that's kind of why that slide is up behind us, because we have sought as a joint board exercise initially just to update the strategy process from 3 years ago. And that's just the beginning of that process. They talked about our challenge in balancing the needs of multiple stakeholders. So there are lots of people involved in making AFC Wimbledon work. Some of us have got defined roles, some have sort of somewhat intangible roles. So many of the people in this room have been board members previously, but still input into the club and have a vision of how the club should be. And we're not doing the best job in balancing the interests and inputs of those multiple stakeholders. Something that we were aware of, the third theme whereby they think we need to improve, is around HR processes, learning and development, and quite frankly, having a more empowered, motivated staff team. So the things that we've done there are to bring in an expert on the board, the former HR director of West Ham, I think I said to you now the HR director at Dulwich College. James is bringing more HR expertise into the club. James MacDonald and Graham have joined Michelle Gull on our HR Safeguarding and Risk Committee. So we're really trying to bolster up our skills and processes in that area. The fourth one, which has been a long-running weakness, interestingly, we probably think it's a strength of the club. We think it's just not being managed as well as it could be, is around volunteers. We think DLAG and WISH are actually setting the high bar, and the club at times is struggling to follow, despite the efforts of a few key people who are trying to really push volunteering. We think those people need more support. I see some of them in this room. So I think the board needs to really find the time to prioritise how we really do become a first-class volunteering organisation, and to really understand how volunteers can work with the club staff. So I wasn't surprised that was identified as a weakness. I remember most of the people interviewed for this were the club staff, so the club staff clearly appreciate the inputs of volunteers. The other thing that this particular study threw up as a weakness was, again, trying to manage expectations about what can and cannot be communicated. So, the most obvious one is, well, how much did you get for that player? And, the Dons Trust Board has kind of issued a statement, as has the PLC Board, and tried to explain why we can't publish transfer fees. There are lots of instances where people are disappointed they haven't been told more, and that is really about a joint conversation as fans and members about what is appropriate and what is in the best interest of the club. So I'm glad Peter asked the question. There are more things from the comms review that the consultant who did it will talk about in an interview shortly, and there are more things from the Q5 review. I think it's a great question, Peter. It's a great point. I honestly, I've sat where you're sitting. I don't think anyone here is trying to hide anything, control anything. I don't see it as a conspiracy. A lot of the time I just see it as prioritising in real time a lack of bandwidth and just the sheer volume of issues that comes every day that board members, past and present, have had to deal with. So please don't take it as we're trying to hide something. We're actually working really hard to get people in place who can give us the best advice. So thank you.
Honestly, I don't think you are trying to hide it. In a way, you prove my point that why didn't you tell us all this without me having to raise the question? There is so much more you should think about in advance about what you can tell us. Yes, I totally get you can't tell us precisely how much you get for certain votes, but that's an area that the fans care about passionately. And it's only since we've got Craig that he's been able to articulate that in an acceptable way to the supporters. And I'd also like to thank Craig for what he's contributed. But please try and think about the things you can tell us that you know we want to know about, and things will get better.
I think it's a great reminder, Peter, thank you, and thanks for all your inputs. They're much appreciated. Eric. Oh, sorry, going down here first.
Andy Ramsden. Just to lighten the mood about, I don't know whether this should be aimed at James, but be interested in anybody's comment. When it comes to match day experience, my son went to the rugby game that was here on Sunday, and to my surprise he sent me photographs of the screen showing highlights of a try that had just been scored. I just wondered whether there was any opportunity to add that as part of the match day experience. And also when it comes to awarding at the end of the game, when it comes to awarding the player of the match award, can we not have people that are actually belong to the club, not outside journalists? I would really like to see people who have the passion of the club, part of the club, up there interviewing that player and anything else that goes, and the sponsors as well at that time.
We've got Ivor.
We've got two mics in the room.
I think she was just adding bring back Ivor maybe, but that's what I thought.
James will come to you in a minute. Yeah.
Thanks, Chris. We've had a lot of good stuff tonight, which is really pleasing. I'd like to go back to the earlier conversations about planning and about strategy and about setting this out. We will be later this year, the board will be bringing to us later this year a vote about going down to 50% plus one vote, I think it is. I really urge you to do that at the same time as a clear plan of what actually that change is going to be used for. I know there are some things, I pick up bits of gossip, there's some things you probably can't tell us, and that's understood, but there's lots of things you could tell us. And I would personally be hugely reluctant to support anything that isn't clear about why we're doing this, what the benefits are, when we're going to deliver it, all that sort of stuff. So that encourages me a lot more than when I arrived that that's going to happen. So please do make sure it does.
Thank you, Eric. It will, and it's being worked on.
Chris, there's a guy at the back that has had his hand up for ages.
So James, we're going to come to you after this one.
Sorry, it's not a very exciting question, but I just wondered how much money you're going to get with the Sky deal and how that compares to previous years. And also the other impact of the Sky deal, such as possibly moving 6 or so games to 12:30 or other times. How does that impact revenue?
Can you get the other mic from in the room somewhere so we can keep one at this table for the staff team to
So Chris, get the mic over here.
One mic here. And there's another one somewhere in the room, I don't know where it is.
So, James.
Sorry, I didn't catch my name. Hi, Andy. So the question about replays that the Broncos use, yes, we're absolutely looking at that. It's there are some technical challenges with it related to the broadcast feed, but it's something we absolutely want to deliver, not only on the big screen, but also on the concourse screens. So yes, we are looking at it. Hopefully we'll be able to update you in the summer ahead of next season. The second question, sorry, from the gentleman at the back.
Yeah.
Hi, I need to follow up with the financial details of the Sky deal. There was an article published on the website today. I don't know whether that detailed the specific financial elements of the enhanced Sky deal. I didn't catch the second part of your question about 6 matches.
According to one website, the Sky deal.
Yes.
Sorry, one website said that the deal's worth £450,000 for some EFL clubs, and obviously clear whether it's per year or over a 5-year period. The website also mentioned that there'll be at least 6 games, but each club has to be moved because of the way in which Sky are going to televise those games to 7, etc., etc. They will be moved to 12:30 slot. So my question is, does that movement to 12:30 have an impact on revenue? Because obviously people will spend some time in the pub beforehand, etc. And how are you going to manage that?
Excellent question. I can't, maybe someone on the board or perhaps on this table here can clarify the financial elements. If not, we will clarify them. There will be a financial impact of earlier kickoffs based on previous experience at a club up the road. What I can't recall is the differential, but naturally there will be a impact to our sales. How will we mitigate that? An excellent question. I don't think we've got the answer yet. But there will be a financial impact of 12:30 kickoffs versus 3 o'clock.
So Jane, and Laurie's sitting there as well. I think from memory, the incremental increase is worth about 200 grand to us, which is good, but you have to remember that every League 2 club will get the 200 grand, so it doesn't necessarily give us a competitive advantage when it comes to the pitch. When the EFL did the deal with Sky, it was made clear after a tender process. By the way, James McDonald has to get a train back to Nottingham at this stage, so he's leaving us. Thanks, James. So when the deal was presented to us by the EFL, it was basically the only deal available to them. And there was obviously a lot of disquiet amongst the clubs about having to move fixtures. It is a few fixtures. We'll do everything we can to negate the revenue impact of those games being moved. And obviously, as football fans, most of us want to go to football on Saturday at 3 o'clock, so it's far from ideal. I think the deal is a 4-year deal. We should have the football regulator well in place by the time it comes up for renewal, so we can see what can be lobbied for and achieved through that route. Thanks for the question, it's a really good one.
Thank you for the second part of the question, forgive me for not acknowledging it. I've seen, I think, 5 man match presentations in this lounge, and we will absolutely review the roster of presenters as we always would, I'm sure, at the end of the season. So rest assured your point has been acknowledged and written down. It will be action. Thank you.
Thank you. How's this going? Are people getting from this what they expected from the evening, or is there something else we'd like to do? Okay,
anyway,
we've got one.
Bob Ford again. Going back to the stadium, do we have any plans in place to enlarge the stadium, or how are we going to finance that? Because we're at about 92% capacity, and if we had a bigger capacity, it would enlarge, because we've engaged with the local community and people are interested. I see lots of, teenagers, women, families at the game. So we're building our fan base. So what will we do about that?
I think I'm going to pick that one up. Thanks for the question. So you're right. I mean, the numbers are on the up. We're selling more season tickets season on season, and we are starting to reach capacity. So behind you is a gentleman called Roger, who has been doing an inordinate amount of work on this for the last 2-3 years, or probably even a bit longer. Well, specifically this, 10 years, Roger, apparently. So there are, well, it's at 2 levels. There are some amazing plans that have been done, and in the work, and Roger's probably even better answering this than me, but obviously in the development of the stadium, the planning was consented to effectively build this all the way around to a capacity of, I think, 18,000. So that's already in place. And we've got the 3rd floor that's vacant. So the issue with the 3rd floor is that we just didn't have the funds to fit it out at the time. And that still holds true. So there's not the capital in the business right now, given the debt repayments that are due, to be able to fit that out. So part of that is to look for a partner who would be able to pay for that fit out, and we would share some kind of revenue attributable to that, be it through a sort of work, one of the remote working environments coupled with some hospitality. There are some very exciting plans. As I said, I think when I spoke an hour ago or so, we don't have the capital to do it, so we would need to find partners, capital partners. But that could include everything from residential towers down in the north to potentially hotels or leisure. So there's plenty. We've got plenty of ground. The team that put the plan together did a fantastic job. So we own that asset. We don't want to be giving that asset away cheap. So it's about finding the right partner and the right plan to develop that. But it's not going to happen overnight. This is sort of part of the master plan to hit this strategy. So hopefully in the next 3 to 4 to 5 years, we'll be coming to you with what those plans look like. But I said, it's not because we can't put in the capital, our share of that isn't going to be as significant as it could have been. But it's still very worthwhile.
Hello, Craig again. Just while I got it in my mind, 12:30 kick-offs, losing revenue. Could we not get a ladies' game on afterwards somehow? Secondly, I feel for Chris here a little bit, because his partner's probably doing the next calendar shoot somewhere and he can't be here this evening helping him out.
That's a great idea about the women's game, Craig. Yeah.
We'll just put a band on.
Some of the Sky games might be on Sunday, Graham tells me. Okay. So. Okay. Any more questions? Eric. Oh.
Tim William. A couple of questions. Firstly, an easy one, balancing the room, so it's possibly out for him. And all credit for the ticket team for all their hard work in the season just gone. Can we have an update, please, on season ticket sales, particularly measured against where we were this time last year? And secondly, I think there's an opportunity, with Eric in the room, he might be able to help with the answer. Ticket resales from return tickets clearly aren't reaching enough people, given the hundreds of empty spaces that we see on games that are designated as sold out. Now, I know that we've raised for those people who want a financial return, we've raised the percentage from 20 to 70%. The last one is 19%. Have we done any studies into those people who regularly don't attend, and maybe ask them why not? And is there an issue about the very low price that we offer, quite rightly so, for youngsters to have a season ticket? Are those the seats that aren't being occupied week in, week out?
Great points, Tim. I'm going to hand you, over to James to give an update on season ticket sales and ticket resale.
Thank you for the question. Yes, at the last count, which was done on Friday ahead of the board meeting, which is on Thursday, we were approximately 500 season tickets ahead of where we were on a like-for-like basis versus last year. So that's counting days on sale, effectively. So 500 up, which was approximately 2,500 sales to date. I haven't got a count as of today, but very encouraging start, I would say. I think it was 4,500 BAL, I'm going to say, is the total season ticket number last year. So I would, with a fair wind, I would hope we'll be on track to match, if not exceed, that number. Around ticket resale, you rightly identify that we firstly increased the ticket resale value from 20% to 50% for Walsall, and we have committed to 70% for next year. With regards to any particular studies, no, there hasn't been any feasibility studies. Essentially, at Crystal Palace I was involved in a hugely successful resale scheme which was also at 90%. I think the general view was that 70% was a good initial increase, and obviously we can review that as time goes on. Once we've analysed the success of the resale platform this season, and we believe there is room to grow it. If we need to adjust that figure further, of course that's within our power to do so. Leading on to your subsequent question around empty seats, obviously the ticket resale product and platform is a mechanism to reduce that. And you rightly say there is potentially a larger area of, I'm just looking at the ground, that tends to be in that corner of the east stand. There does appear to be more blue and yellow seats than perhaps there should be. We need to make sure that we do have affordable entry-level pricing for season tickets. There was a lot of discussion around whether those season tickets were too cheap. I think we felt, on balance, that it was appropriate to freeze that pricing to make sure we have an accessible season ticket pricing point. I have to clarify the numbers, but I think it's £35 for children and £3.50, I want to say, for adults, which is still, a very competitive price. I think we will review that in years to come, is my sense. There may be a case for it being too cheap, but it's something with more proactive comms, with a better resale percentage and value back to the supporter. I hope we will positively impact on the capacity next season. Does that answer your question? I may have missed something there. Mick, feel free to add to it if necessary.
No, that's great. Thank you very much, James. Chris? Who's got the mic?
I've got the microphone unless someone else has got one. The one thing we haven't talked about tonight is the reason that brings us all together. Can you tell us anything, Craig, about what's going on?
Not working. Yeah, so actually I think there's going to be an interview go out with Slav tomorrow or Wednesday?
Yes, tomorrow.
Sorry, Laurie, on your face. Yes, we are trying to be as active as we can be. The market is very slow at the minute. I'm assuming you talk about transfers, not the pitch renovations at the training ground, which have started, and the pitch got ripped up the other day. So we're trying to be as proactive as we can be. We're looking at, with 7 weeks to go for the lads are back, I think it's going to be a sit and wait window. And there's a lot more players available this year, just the way contracts have fell, so clubs have a little bit more control than they have done January and previously. So trying to be methodical. We've got our targets. They're really expensive at the minute. The sooner you get down towards pre-season, they start to be more realistic. And you've done this job, I think. You know what it's about, so...
Is there anything anybody will want to talk to you about?
Yeah, well, no, I keep getting on the same. There's loads of press speculation that some's way off, some's semi-close, and yeah. As soon as we have something, we'll announce it, and I'm hopeful we'll get at least one in the next couple of weeks, and things start speeding up.
Thank you.
Hi, Joshua Martin. Just give you some background. Last season was my first season as a season ticket holder, member of the Dons Trust. Words escape me, sorry. Don Supporters Trust. And in relation to the slide that's currently up there with the strategic priorities and the patterns, obviously no disrespect to any of the existing fans that have been here for however long, built the club, etc. But do you have any plans for potentially getting feedback from new fans on the growing of the membership, etc.? Again, obviously not saying in place of what existing fans their feelings are, their views are, their ideas. But I just wondered if that was something that had been looked into by the club.
Well, on the Don's Trust membership side, we're in the middle of putting a survey together of members as they stand now. Any new members that are joining us via their season tickets, those members will not have a membership until the 1st of July when the next year starts. So we have been talking about doing another survey, and so the question is, do we do the same survey asking a lot of general questions to members now? Do we repeat that to that new group, or do we do another one that's all-inclusive? So we're looking at that at the moment. We haven't decided.
Martin, did you want to ask Craig your question about selling players in January? Do it with the mic, that's best.
Yeah, basically, obviously it's difficult. Should we gauge the fans' opinion about selling players as a general rule before the end of the season that could affect our position in the league, etc.? So you'd have an idea that whether they were for or against it. So if they were mostly against it, then you wouldn't have to do it, basically.
I think in theory it's a really good idea. I think in practice it's not something that's plausible. So Mick sent me your email earlier, so I've had a bit of time to prep, and now my brain's gone. Obviously, I say these guys employ you guys employ me to try and make the best decision for the football club. So when Ali went in January, so let's be honest, I know we can talk about the Sal one, Ali's the big one, Ali's the one where we're all sat there going.
It goes back to Ollie Palmer, because we went.
Yeah. But I've got my thoughts on that, and I'll be honest with you, if I was sat here 4 years ago and Ollie Palmer we had that money on the table for him and that happened, I'd have drove him to Wrexham, so I'm in favour of what happened then.
Yeah, but to me, it goes back about ambition about trying to win something.
Yes.
I'd rather win something and not have the money.
Yeah, but you weren't going to
win
win.
and have loads of money.
So we don't want to lose players in January. Myself and the manager, we feel put together this really good squad this year. To lose our talisman, if you like, in January was a bit of a kick in the teeth. But I don't think it was the main reason why it's obviously hindered us. I don't think it was the main reason why they didn't get the playoffs. I don't want to sit here as someone had said to everyone here that don't excuses, I don't want this. That weren't the biggest reason we didn't get the playoffs.
It's not the only reason, obviously. If we score penalties, we'd be in the playoffs.
100%. And there's a few other things around that as well, but I didn't score penalties, if you remember.
We might have been in the ultimate.
But no, like, got to look at the human element as well. These players are coming here, and I think when they're here, and we're trying to see more of it now, they buy into the story, they buy into what the football club's about. I think we're really good at getting better at selling that, and these guys have mentioned that earlier. But they're going to be offered life-changing money. They're going to be offered they're going to make decisions for themselves that's going to surpass AFC Wimbledon, unfortunately.
Yeah, but being a fans club, if you take the fans one above everything else,
that's fine. So the issue we're going to have is I would get. So let's play your scenario out. I would get an email from Ipswich saying the offer has been this much money, which we're not going to tell everyone how much money that is because it puts us at a sporting disadvantage. I'm then going to email all the members saying, do you want to sell this player? I need to know by this.
I'm not saying you have to ask at the time.
Okay, so I go to the agent, I go to the player, you're not going to times 10 your salary, you're not going to look after your family for the rest of their life because 2,500 people have voted in favour of you staying. And he goes, I'm never going to play for your football club again. I've got a hamstring strain, I'm injured, I can't do that. So, in theory, you're absolutely spot on, because that's what kicking the teeth losing our best players. But we've also, when it gets to a certain stage where I go, I've got to get the best deal on the table, you guys have got to trust me to get the best deal on the table for the football club. And then we've got to try and reinvest it as best we can with what we get, and we've just got to move forward like that. I think it is, sorry, I'm going to run in circles, it's a kick in the teeth, but it's something that we have to deal with and have to move on with, unfortunately.
Thank you both. So, it's a great conversation. So when I come to be sitting down there again at some stage as a Dons Trust member, how much input do I get day to day into the way the club is run? You know, what is it that I should be told about? And I think that kind of contracting with members as to what membership means is a really important ongoing process. So slightly related to that conversation. Okay, how are we doing for time? Okay, we were going to finish at past, but the SGM went on 20 minutes longer than anticipated. So let's commit for another 9 minutes. So yeah, let's have another question.
It is Bob Ford again. Simply talking a lot. Following on from that last conversation, I think it's a positive that we allow players to move on, because that will entice people to play for us because we develop their careers. But my second point is, which is more important, developing the ground or developing the training facilities? That's my question.
Well, I have the member of the development committee to my left, so both things are tremendously important, because the more, if we can find the right financial way of developing the ground, and we have more people in here contributing more money, I guess that gives us a greater opportunity to develop the training grounds. And it's a bit of a circular thing, because if we have a fantastic training ground, then we will attract even better footballers. They'll take us higher up the pyramid, and then we'll have more people in here in a developed ground. So I really do think it's both things in parallel. But Nick, it'd be good to get your insight.
No, I completely agree. I suppose the financial model of both is going to be slightly different. We will find a financial institution that will want to develop this land around us. I think that's probably more likely to happen in the next 3 to 4 to 5 years. As far as the training ground, it's got a harder investment, a harder return for somebody for what they get on that. So I agree with Mick. It's probably in parallel, but probably more likely ground first.
Yeah, and just to update, we are in conversations about developing our own training ground. So that's not something that's just distantly on the horizon. We are having active conversations about that. So it's absolutely integral. If we ever want to upgrade the category of the academy, if we ever do want to get to the championship, then it's an area that's got to be much improved. So those conversations are happening. Michelle's reminded me we have a question about the London Broncos. A former CEO indicated that we would have £500,000 per season if they got promoted to the Premiership. Has that happened? I'll answer that one, James. I mean, we can't, it's a great example of where it's not advantageous to actually circulate the exact number. It's not 500,000, but it has grown quite significantly with their promotion. So it's obviously difficult to comment on something somebody said so long ago, but they won a game this weekend, which is great news. So they have a chance of staying in that league. So it's not £500,000, but it's much better than it was last season. We have had another question to do with stewarding and whether the stewarding here is too tough in relation to home fans. The question also talked about a specific incident where somebody was ejected from the stadium, and I don't think that the latter incident is now subject to a legal issue, so we're not going to get into that. But I think in terms of thinking about how we steward the stadium, I think, James, you might just want to say one or two words about that.
Yes, we're going to read the question out there, or the second part. It was just a general comment about query around the nature of our stewarding setup.
Yeah, I think there's a perception at times from our fans that they're being over-stewarded and the stewards are just a little bit too tough on them as home fans. That's the writer is sort of communicating that perception.
Thank you. So one of the most important factor for me and Phil and the security team and Peter, the operations director who's here tonight, is to ensure that we meet our safety certificate, and that requires a certain level of stewarding in terms of the volume of stewards and the checks that are carried out. My understanding before I joined here in March was there were some reports of supporters moving between stands, which places our safety certificate at risk. Obviously that is not acceptable, because if that was a repeated occurrence, the risk is that our capacity could, by Merton Council and the Safety Advisory Committee, be reduced. So we obviously need to ensure that isn't the case. So in the latter part of the season, supporters may well have noticed enhanced security checks to ensure that people who were in the South Stand, seat X, seat 1, was indeed entitled to be in the South Stand. Yes, that does present more ticket checks, but it's important we meet the requirements of our safety certificate. The follow-up point around, I think it was around the ensuring that we have regular stewards effectively. We are currently wholly reliant on agency security staff, which they obviously do a great job in our opinion, and Phil's opinion, who's the head of security. Obviously having an agency outsourced model for security leads to higher costs for the football club, so I have asked Phil to look at advertising for in-house security, which went out this week, and we very much hope that there is an influx of applicants and we can ensure we can eat into that agency percentage, which will hopefully reduce costs for the football club, but also provide regular faces for you all, whatever stand you're in, and build relationships with the steward in your patch. And I very much hope that number of in-house security staff will grow in the years to come. Hopefully that answers the question, Nick.
Yeah, it does, James. And if the gentleman that sent in the email is watching the recording, then the club safety officer will be very happy to sit down with you and talk directly about the concerns that you've raised in the email. Okay, so. Right, we're coming up to the end. Is there one more question? So I think we've covered everything we wanted to cover. Our main objective from this evening was just to sort of let you see who the operating board are, to hear about some of the work that's been going on. We really appreciate all of the engagement in this room, and just thank you very much. We are getting somewhere really good, and we're going to go somewhere even better. So let's just stick with it, and thank you very much.